morning. We are talking rabbit trails curriculum this morning. First step, I want to go into the coronation is this weekend. That's right. And did you know Queen Elizabeth II was homeschooled by her mother and her governess? If that isn't one more reason to love Queen Elizabeth, honestly. So have an English tea, that would be my recommendation. Get a teapot out, have an English tea, and watch a bit of the coronation or the videos of a summary of it so that you can see them in their carriages driving to and leaving, and just, you don't get to see that too often, so take a look at that and enjoy it. Next up, we got products. So in the science curriculum that I'm discussing today, she recommends a dissection kit, and I've actually used that dissection kit. She recommends a salamander one. I have used the frog one, and what I like about it is that it doesn't have chemicals in it per se. It's just like jelly. So you're doing a dissection. It comes with all the tools and everything, and you're pulling it apart, and you're seeing the whole inside of the frog. But it's not. It doesn't have the chemicals. It doesn't have the realness of I don't know, is it formaldehyde? I don't know what it is in them generally, because I tried to read and I couldn't find out. But so I just felt safer using these. So that will also be on the website under science. To go along with science today and animals, since that's what we're talking about, this is a poem a day book, which you may have seen it before on my channel. Poem a day, every day of the year it's got one. But there's an alternative to this one. This is Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. You can find it under kindergarten on my website. But alternatively, there is the National Geographic Animal Poems one, which has a real picture. So I just kind of like those better because it has real pictures of animals and spiders and different things. So whatever animal you are working on, if you're doing these science curriculums I'm going to tell you about today, you can, flip to that section. All right, another book. This is one of the spines for the program she recommends. This is the spine, and it's a great spine. I think her books are really well chosen. It's a literacy-based program, meaning that, so each section, so her science is divided into 4 different packages. And so when you get one of those packages, each has at least 2 different spines. 3 of them have 2 different spines, and then the 4th one is the birds one, which has 4 different spines that you're gonna use. And at first I was intimidated by the birds one, but my one son was asking to learn about birds, and I was intimidated by it. And I thought, you know what? I'm learning alongside them, so I don't need to know anything about birds. I don't need to field questions. All I need to do is get these 2 to 4 books and then read through the curriculum and do the curriculum with them, and we'll all learn together. So anyway, that's just a side note about me and birds. I was like, ooh, and then it was not that scary. Imagine that. So this is the space book. This is the space spine, and I adore it, especially because it comes with a bookmark, which I think is fabulous. So let's talk, one piece of advice, because I try to give you a piece of advice every day. One piece of advice I want you to consider, and I say it a lot, but I just want to reiterate it again, is to lessen the homeschool weight of you, even if you don't want to go year round, to maybe consider doing math and language arts every day, but then for a 6-week increment, maybe focus on like one of these science curriculums, for example. You can do about a lesson a week, I would say, and I would say about 8 weeks per program. But you can speed it up because it's not intensive. And what it has is, so every lesson you go into it, and you need to get your own notebook. So you get your own notebook, which I think is great, because a lot of times when you buy these family style curriculums, it's like, here's a notebook for this age group, here's a notebook for this age group, here's a notebook for this age group, and they're never exactly hitting the nail on the head when it comes to little kids, because some little kids can't write, and some little kids draw more, so there's just variations among that, whereas here you're just getting a notebook. So based on your age, you write the information and record the information based on your age. So you draw pictures if you're younger. It's even got a lot of research elements into the curriculum. So if you're older, you can go and you can research these vocab words. You can do the copy work. And it also each lesson has a quote from the Bible, which she has interpreted for you so that you don't have to sit there and interpret it yourself. And then you can read that to your children if you want, like word for word, what she wrote down. You can read that to your children if you want. Let's talk about these lessons. So we got reptiles, amphibians, which is, again, they're all about at least 100 pages for the curriculum. So like reptiles, amphibians, 100 pages. So when I was going through it, what I love, so you get the 2 spines, and then every week there's a library list, or every lesson. You can do the lessons as fast or slow as you want. And every lesson, there's a library list that you can get. You do not have to get, but there are additional storybooks that have to do with the curriculum. There's also additional videos you can get as well, but again, you don't have to. The big thing about her curriculums, besides the fact that it's not expensive, are the activities. The activities are sweet. So for the snake, let me give you an example. So for the snake one, you cut up a paper plate like a little snake, but then you take bubble wrap, you paint it green, and you put bubble wrap over it to give it like the scales. Let me give you an idea of another one. So in the biomes, it talks about what an estuary is, which is where salt water meets lake water, which I learned from because of that curriculum. Salt water meets lake water, for example, or fresh water. So take, a Pyrex pan, put it down, take 2, mason jars or cups or whatever, and fill them each with water, and then dye one blue, dye one red, and put salt water into the blue one, and then mix them, like at each end, dump them in, and see how they mix, see how they interact, just to get an example as to what's gonna happen. But my favorite activities of hers, and they're great, every week there's at least one, but you can choose more. The activities are what make this curriculum, besides the price point, it's not very much money either. The activities for the space one are super cool. So for example, you take, a bunch of different balls that you have in the house, or flags. You can make, print off flags or whatever if you want, on a straw, and put them in the ground too, next to the ball. But what you're doing is essentially you're setting up a real life solar system based on, like, on the ground, though, how it would look. So what I like about these things is that they're doable. Like, you don't need materials. Like, you do the food web. I think it's in the biomes, you do the food web using yarn in your table. So, and construction paper or paper to simulate, a real life food web. So I just think another great activity is during the snakes. Snakes, that they're most powerful, the way they find food is using their tongue. It's like their most powerful sense, I guess you could say. Something to do with their tongue. It's more in depth than that she goes into, but essentially it's their tongue. And so what if you couldn't use your most powerful scent to find food? Like, what if you couldn't use your eyes to find food? And so to blindfold you and see, like, try it, see if you can find food. And another one in the space one is just simulating how rocks are made, how craters are made on Mars, for example, or on the moon. And I just think, they're just so doable. They're easy, they're fun, and they're doable. And my problem with science curriculums is that the experiments, is that sometimes Sunlight to me is my least favorite for that, because they have all these obscure parts you have to find. And that's another thing, the difference between, for example, Sunlight, which is a highly regarded curriculum, which I'm not a huge fan of their science, and I have 3 years of it, so I should know, is that there's such an incredible amount of busy work. Oh my gosh, you do not need to learn all this stuff that Sunlight has laid out. You don't need to, plus the cost for it. Whereas this, just the difference in cost and time and activities, it's a no-brainer to me. It's a no-brainer. And one thing that separates this, another thing that separates this curriculum from other curriculums, besides the fact that there's no busy work, besides the fact that the activities are easy to implement and very interesting, is that a lot of curriculums I've noticed that are done by homeschool people, a lot of curriculums that are done by that don't always include a high number of fiction books. They include a lot of non-fiction books, which are just it's not as interesting a way to learn. Like, for example, there's this book called Accept Antarctica, which is a great book, and I suggest you get it. And it's about how there's turtles everywhere in the world except Antarctica. And so this turtle decides, you know what, I'm going to Antarctica. So it's a fiction book, but it teaches you a lot of non-fiction information. And it's such a gentle and interesting way to learn. And so her curriculum contains a lot of books like that you're gonna learn information about things, but in a gentle, fun way. Anyway, clearly I like the curriculum. Clearly I rave about it. And no, I'm not paid, I'm not an affiliate, I'm nothing like that. I just like it. I think it's a good curriculum. So consider it. And that is your video today, and I will see you back here tomorrow.
Please like and subscribe.
Yes.
And hit the bell for notifications.